What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Retro Hoop Collectibles. We got a bit of a deep dive video today. The other day, if you haven't watched the PSA grade reveal from Monday, I'll link it somewhere here so you guys can take a look at it. In that video, I was going over my recent PSA sub that I just got back. And I got some good grades in there, and then I got one really crappy grade. And I couldn't understand why. I was trying to figure out why such a drastic difference, right, between the two grades when most of those cards were virtually the same. So I've been pretty vocal about PSA's like inconsistency in their grading, including like just to their own standard, right, to their own grading scale. And so what I wanted to do was just really take a look at it, like really deep dive into it and see if even what I'm saying is true, like my perception of what's happening is even somewhat true. So I decided to do a little bit of, let me see if I have this other thing. I decided to do a little bit of digging into what was going on with my sub in particular. Because there was one card in there that I got a 10 on, and then virtually the same card got a 6. So it really left me with this just weird feeling that something ain't right. So let's start off with one thing. So we'll jump to really quickly PSA's grading scale. The card in question that I got two cards. I got one got a PSA 10 and the other one got a PSA 6. And we won't go over what a PSA 10 is. That's pretty self-explanatory. So the PSA 6 is where I kind of was having an issue. So I'll have it here up on the screen, but I'll read it out. PSA 6 cards may have visible surface wear or a printing defect, which does not detract from the overall appeal. Very light scratches may be detected only upon close inspection. Corners may have slightly graduated fraying. That's a really important one. We'll go over here in a second. Fraying. Picture focus must be slightly out of register. Card may show some loss of original gloss and have minor wax stains or reverse. The reverse may exhibit very slight notching and edging, and edges may also show some off-whiteness or borders. The centering must be 80-20 or better on the front, or 90-10 or better on the reverse. So there's a whole lot of stuff there, right, that kind of walks through. There's a lot to digest there. There's a lot of individual things that would categorize an item as a PSA 6. But what it doesn't say is that, like, okay, if your card gets a PSA 6, it has all of these things, right? What I'm realizing with PSA is that as you look through their grading scales, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, if it has one of the things that's in the description of that grading scale, then that automatically brings you down to that grade, right? And if you think about it in that sense, right, some of these really oddball things start to make sense. So let's take a look at the first. I took a couple of videos. So what I did is I grabbed this loop here, one of these lighted LED loops. I have a link in the description for an Amazon link if you guys want to pick that loop up. It's pretty good. I've used it for everything. And I kind of held it up to the camera here. And let's take a look. So we'll look at the PSA 10 first, because that's kind of the example, like sort of the benchmark, right, of what you want ultimately. Let me see here. Open with. All right. So here is the PSA 10. Now you'll have to excuse me because this thing is it is upside down, which is kind of weird, but you get what I'm saying. So here's the PSA 10, and I'm going through the corners with the loop. So there it is, the PSA 10, and you see all the edges nice and straight. This was a great card. You see some little lint there, but I think that's just part of the that was like post grading. But otherwise, this card was in great shape, as I thought. Some of the other ones were, but just to kind of go through it, I went through all the edges. The surface was clean. Everything was great on this card. Corners was good. The centering was good. Again, these are hand cut cards, right? So it's noted there on the slab that it's a hand cut card. So rightfully so, I think this one got a 10. It was great. It was a great card. I have it right here in front of me. It's a beautiful card. It got a 10. I was happy about that. A few of these got a 9. One of them got an 8. But the 6 is what really threw me off, right? And to those of you who have graded with PSA, it's not uncommon for you to get a string of 9s and 10s, and then all of a sudden just get this oddball one, which is like just a 6 or a 7. I've been watching a lot of subs recently, and there's a lot of folks coming back with some really, really oddball grades. And so I decided to use this example as a deep dive. So what you just saw was the PSA 10, beautiful card. What I'm going to show you next is the PSA 6. Now, we're going to jump back and forth from the PSA 6 screen to the PSA 6 description of what PSA considers a 6. And in this case, I was wrong. The PSA 6 deserved a 6, and I'll go over why. Because this is something that, again, I've been very critical of when it comes to PSA. And it wasn't until I actually read some of the descriptions of what a 6 is, and then started to look for those elements within the card, right? I think as collectors, or even if you're submitting for grades and things like that, we're looking for the card to meet the description of what a 10 is, and not really looking at any of the other grades to see if any of those elements are found in our card. Which is, for me, a big mental shift in the way I'm looking at some of these cards. Because if any of the elements that are listed in a 5, a 6, or a 7 are present in my card, I'm realizing that that's automatically going to take you to that grade. It's not going to be that if one of those things that's in a PSA 6 is present in your card and nothing else, because everything else is perfect, it's going to take you out of that 6 into a 8 or a 9, right? It almost, it doesn't work that way from what I'm seeing, right? So we'll jump into the video of the PSA 6, and you guys will see what I'm looking at. So here we go. Here's the PSA 6, and immediately you start to see one thing: the fraying. Okay, so back to the description of a PSA 6. The card may have visible surface wear, very light scratches. Corners may have slightly graduated fraying. There, in my example of a PSA 6, there is some fraying. See, as we get here, you'll see this corner or this edge here, where the hand cut was done, wasn't clean. There's some fraying there. Right? Same thing here. There's another piece of fraying that went on. Now, for all intents and purposes, the card looks great when you hold it in front of you. But the moment you get one of these bad boys underneath it, it really starts to show what PSA is looking at. And if you notice, to PSA's point, it says upon close inspection, right? Very light scratches may be detected only upon close inspection. Guys, again, I've been very critical of PSA. This is me telling you guys that the way I've been thinking about it is not correct. I have not been looking at this correctly. And this has been a big shift in the way that I'm thinking about when I'm submitting cards to be graded. So even though my centering on this card is not 80-20 by any means on the front, or even 9-10 on the rear by any means, there's no loss of gloss on this card. It's in great condition. There's no scratches. There's nothing. But there is fraying present on my card. And I really believe that, see, here's a little bit more of that right there. I really believe that is what knocked me down. Now, the fraying on this card, on this PSA 6 that I got, was only on a small portion of the card. But it was there nonetheless. You'll notice that the majority of the card is extremely sharp as I'm going around the edges here. And then as we get to the top, again, there's a little bit more fraying there, which pulls it down to a 6. The top of it here, again, some fraying. And then again, what I showed you guys previously, which was a lot of this big fraying here. This big one here, I mean, that's a big one right there. You can really see it right there. So I want to put this video out there because I think for those of you who are just getting into grading, it's important that you understand how each individual company grades cards, because each company is different. Each company has their standards, and each company has their way by which they adhere to those standards, right? There's some flexibility. SGC, for example, really looks at eye appeal, okay? Which is why, if you think about it, they look at the card as a whole, holistically, and go, okay, does this make sense? Yes, it has a little bit of fraying, but it has everything else correct. So it's almost like it lets it excuses some things in lieu of other things that are perfect. And then they look at the card overall in terms of, okay, eye appeal, overall eye appeal, how does this look? I think PSA is a little bit more tight to what their descriptions are. And if there's any element of the description of that grade present in your card, you're going to get that grade. As in this example here for me. I don't know if this is pretty consistent, but I encourage those of you who have had these submissions where you've gotten really good grades and you get that one oddball card that just got a 6 or a 7. I encourage you to pick this up. Pick one of these up. If you don't get it from my link or whatever, I don't care. But just pick one of these up. Pick up a loop, an LED, a lighted loop, LED loop, and really be critical of your cards and really take a look at it and look at the description of the grade that you got and see if there's any elements of that description in your card. Because you might have all the elements of a PSA 10 in your card, right? In my case, the centering was great. The surface was great. The corners were great. But the edges had some slight fraying. And that's what got me a 6. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I would really look forward to everyone's feedback because this is a huge, huge paradigm shift for me as a collector and how I'm submitting to PSA and what I would be expecting. Because if I had this thought process, or if I had this idea or this standard in my head now, it's important that you look at your card. I would have looked completely at my cards completely differently, and I probably would not have submitted that card because it has fraying. So, am I becoming a PSA fan? No, I'm not becoming a PSA fanboy. Okay. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I appreciate you guys as always. Never afraid to admit I'm wrong on something. Never afraid to change my mind in light of new evidence. Always trying to be as open and transparent as I can with my experience with what I'm doing and sharing it with y'all. So, leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you guys watching. As always, we'll catch you on the next video. Love y'all. Peace.